Hello and welcome to Jump To It for IrishRacing.com and Betting Expert. I'm Shane Anderson, and we've got a lot to talk about on today's show because this wonderful summer period of racing through Europe is continuing to build momentum. We saw some fantastic racing, of course, last week in the UK and also this week in France, and it's great to welcome in the team to talk about that and also what's coming up this weekend with Group 1 action from Ireland. Vincent Finegan from IrishRacing.com and Ed Quigley join me. Guys, great to catch up. As I said there, Vincent, so many highlights at the moment from a racetrack perspective. But we will start with some really sad news coming through, and that is that the legendary stallion Galileo sadly died on the weekend, aged 23. He is a horse that will well and truly be, in honour of the title, a breed shaper.
Oh, without a doubt, yeah, it's incredible what's happened there. His career was unbelievable. His racing career was very good, but obviously quite short. So it's hard to know, was he one of the greatest racehorses ever? Probably not, but still an extremely talented racehorse. But the key to him was what happened at stud. He's ended up, there's 92 of his progeny have won Group 1 races since. I think 20 of his sons have then gone on to breed Group 1 winners as well. So it's an amazing legacy that he's left, and it's only going to get more and more as the years go by with more and more of these horses winning races. The big issue, of course, with this is what do Coolmore do? Like, he was an incredible cash cow for them besides everything else. Supposed to be around 40 million a year they were bringing in stud fees, which is some number. So that's a loss for any business. It doesn't matter whether you're a Microsoft or a Google or whoever you are. 40 million from one source gone, literally with the drop of a hat as such. It puts them in a funny predicament now. They've got to try and find a successor. That's a very difficult job, you would imagine.
Yeah, I tend to agree. As Ed, I welcome you into the conversation. I think Vincent touches on a really good point. As a racehorse, he was magnificent at 3 Group 1 wins, a Derby, an Irish Derby and a King George. But, well, and without a doubt, his legacy is what he's been able to do in the breeding shed, not only from the sire sons that he's produced, but so many wonderful daughters. So the broodmare band from his legacy will be enormous for many, many decades to come, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. As we say, he was an exciting horse whilst he was on the track, but it's the excitement off the track, isn't it, really, of what he's produced? I mean, that stat that Vincent just pulled up there, 92 Group 1 winners, is quite remarkable, isn't it? And yeah, his offspring are fantastic. Interesting to listen to a lot of the connections, a lot of the jockeys, Shamey Heffernan saying the other day in an interview when he was asked, he said he's very seldom sat on a Galileo progeny who just won't try for you. They'll run on forever. They'll run through brick walls. I think he said words to that effect. And that seems to be the hallmark to him. Yes, you get a lot of horses, a lot of quality, etc., and they can be a bit flashy, but it's that kind of toughness and that just will not go down attitude, which seems to kind of, combined with the skill and the quality, seems to kind of elevate the Galileo crop from so many others, it seems to be said. And yeah, it's a huge void for the Ballydor, the Coolmore team, the operation now. Where did they go next? I'm sure they probably had some plan in mind for some time because, like all great businesses, they've often got contingency plans. But yeah, bit of a hole to fill there, isn't there? But yeah, a remarkable stallion, arguably number one of all time, and it will take some surpassing.
It was interesting to see what happened when the announcement came through regarding Galileo, Vincent, because Bolshoi Ballet, who's the son of Galileo, actually won a Group 1 or Grade 1 race not too long after that announcement came through, winning the Belmont Derby. Aidan O'Brien also had a big weekend in the United States with Santa Barbara also winning a Group 1. So it's one of those situations in racing where even though you might be going through a circumstance where really sad news or, a big story could be impacting a business like the loss of Galileo, but the show goes on, and within hours, Aidan O'Brien's getting future Group or Grade 1 winners into the roster with their performances.
Yeah, it's a little aside here is the fact that it's funny that the day he dies, that his son goes and wins a Grade 1 in the States. It's funny how that seems to always happen in racing. You find a major owner dies, guaranteed they'll have a winner that day. I've been at funerals here in Ireland where a particular person's horse has won while we're at the funeral. It's incredible how that seems to always pop up. But anyway, that was interesting with the 2 Grade 1s in America. To be honest with you, they were probably substandard races. Those 2 horses, it's interesting that Bolshoi Ballet started favourite for the Derby in Epsom and ran a stinker. Had a cut leg, I think, afterwards was the excuse. And then Santa Barbara, the same in the Oaks. Started favourite there as well. So it's just interesting that he's got the 2 of them back on track with Grade 1 wins. No doubt they'll be heading to the Breeders' Cup would be the plan for both of them at this stage.
I think, Ed, I'll touch on Santa Barbara with you because you have been quite outspoken with your assessment of this filly. She's very good, but perhaps she hadn't been living up to the hype that everyone had been hearing about her. But what did you make of her performance? And do you agree with Vincent? Are they more logical types now to progress to, say, the Breeders' Cup? Or do you think we'll see them competing back in Europe later this season?
Yeah, interesting. Ryan Moore's comments in the aftermath seem to be pretty much saying it. They took these two here with a view of how they would handle the travel, the start of racing in America, with the longer-term view to the Breeders' Cup. I suppose if they bombed out here, then it would have been back to the drawing board and back to these shores. I get a feeling, yes, they both will end up at the Breeders' Cup meeting in some shape or form. Belshore Ballet, it was good to get that horse back in the winner's enclosure after his cut leg and his absolute flop at Epsom. And Santa Barbara, of course, I've been pushing the lay button all along in her races over here. But I just thought she's been overbet, to be blunt. And yeah, she got the job done in America. I thought the filly actually got Ryan Moore out of a little bit of trouble in that race, if truth being told. And it was a smart performance. But again, if you look at the collateral form, the horses in behind, it was a glorified Group 3, if I'm being blunt. If you brought those horses over here and put them in kind of UK terms, that's the kind of level I think you'd be looking at. So look, be interested where they go. That I think both will end up in regards to your initial point, Shane. I think they both will end up in the Breeders' Cup. Confidence boosting victories, but I'm not, without trying to be too pessimistic, I'm not sure the actual raw form amounts to too much.
Of course, we'll talk a little bit more about this later, but this battle in the big races between Coolmore and Godolphin continues. It seems to be as soon as Coolmore win a Group 1, Godolphin strike back and win one, and we'll talk about Hurricane Lane shortly. I want to talk about what's going on with the latest regarding Irish trainer Jim Bolger, Vincent, because it's a story that's not going away. And there's, which you've covered in irishracing.com this week. There's been some commentary coming from the head of the Trainers Association in Ireland saying that he's spoken at length to Jim Bolger. Names are not being revealed, types of drugs are not being revealed. So we seem to be at some sort of standstill regarding where this is going, but it's a story that's not going away.
Without a doubt. That kind of sums it up, Shane, in the sense that we've allegations sitting there and there seems to be no way to basically put them away for good. They're just stuck there and there's no real way around this. It's kind of an impasse. Last week, on Thursday last week, we had an Oireachtas hearing which the government had put together. So their agricultural committee, who funds racing ultimately, because horse racing falls under the agriculture and marine section of the government. So basically what happened was they're putting 80 million a year in. We've got these allegations. They're saying, come on in, guys, and tell us what the hell is going on here. There seems to be a problem. So last Thursday, they brought in the IHRB, who are the regulators for the sport, and they also brought in Horse Racing Ireland, who administer the sport and get the money off the government, which they ultimately give a portion to the IHRB to run the anti-doping and all the other aspects of the sport. So that hearing went on for a couple of hours. Due to COVID, it has to stop at that stage because there's people in a room and not allowed to be there for more than 2 hours. So they had to reconvene. So they switched their schedule a little bit. Tuesday of this week, we were due to have the Department of Agriculture and the Irish Trainers Association in, but what they did was they moved the Agriculture Department to the 20th of July, and instead they brought back the IHRB and Horse Racing Ireland to answer the last of the questions that were to be put to them. And also the trainers gave their stance and where they sat on this. Nothing major came out of it, with the exception that there was one aspect of it that Michael Grassick, who's the chairman or the CEO of the Trainers Association, he basically said that when this story broke late last year, that he had a long conversation with Jim Bolger and got no names, got no specific drugs that are involved or whatever else. So said in his own mind he couldn't take this any further. It turns out that obviously there was a bit of fallout from that somewhere along the way, that the trainers in Ireland, there's 350 licensed trainers and there's 8 who are not in their association. Jim Bolger was in their association, but since mid-March this year, he's no longer in their association. So obviously there's a bit of a problem there somewhere as well, that there's a split in the ranks to some extent. Basically, you had Michael Halford, his long-standing trainer, was an amateur jockey in his day, a successful amateur jockey. He's been a successful trainer. He's got a fabulous yard just off the Curragh, a couple of miles from the Curragh, and does everything right. He's chairman of their association. He's also on the board of Horse Racing Ireland. From that position, guarantees him a seat there as well. And then you have Michael Grassick, who was a trainer himself for 30 odd years. He's been running their association as CEO for the last 10 years or so. Both of them basically said there's nothing to see here. And maybe they're right. But the problem is there's a perception here that there's something else going on. And there was a feeling, it was almost like, bookmakers, when you talk about problem gambling, or that issue was raised with bookmakers. Oh, we do everything. We sort of, there's one or two people have an issue, but realistically, it's not a problem generally. And what ends up happening is you get another incident like a Tony 10 guy that we had over here, who'd basically the bookmakers were enabling him to lose fortunes that he obviously didn't have, and he was robbing it from his businesses and everything else. So one of those pops up and you go, oh, okay, you get the odd one of them. All right, we're really sorry for that. We move on. There's not really a problem. And the trainers thing was something similar. They were saying, look, there's nothing here. There's no sign of drugs, nothing happening. And yet, say, but what about your trainers were banned for steroids back in the 2012-13 time. 2 trainers lost their license. Okay, we had those, but there's still nothing to see here. And if you take it that we currently have 3 trainers in Ireland are on long-term bans, admittedly not for steroids or anything like that. We've got Stephen Mahon over issues with the care of the horses that he had. We've Gordon Elliott for sitting on the dead horse, which everyone knows about. And then we've also got Charles Burns over the fact that he left a horse unattended, is what he got a 7-month ban for with that horse Viking Horde. So we've the 350 licensed trainers. We've 2 not so long ago got long-term bans for steroids. We've got 3 are currently off the books because of other incidents that happened. It's not 100% clean here, and the issue for me is that we've got a problem with perception here. You've got a self-regulating industry, and maybe that's the big problem. That's from a government point of view, this needs to be squeaky clean. If we're getting 80 million a year coming into the sport, which everybody needs, there's no doubt that's what has all those winners you see in Cheltenham, those winners in Royal Ascot and everywhere else. The reason those Irish horses are winning is because we've got serious government funding coming in. And you see it in all other sports. Look at the Olympics, will be on now in a couple of weeks. And the best of the athletes there are the ones that are best supported by their countries with funding. The UK have done fantastic with their GB and everything else, all the money that was pushed into that. You saw the effects that's had in particularly the London Olympics. It's the same with horse racing here. The funding is a huge, huge factor for us. We need to keep it, to keep the sport at the level it's at. But to do that, I think there's going to have to be some fundamental changes.
I think you touched on a really good point and an important point, and that comes down to self-regulation. I think, for sports to really succeed, you need to make sure that there is an independence when it comes to the management of integrity services. It's pointless having the own group having oversight or policing their own jurisdiction, and particularly when in horse racing, as an example, you've got such a close relationship between the trainers and the stables with veterinary science, and there can often be some crossovers. It doesn't mean that the intent is always to break the laws, but if there are rules in place, they need to be administered. And there's always a perception that people will be pushing hard to the edge to get an advantage. Do you think there would be an opportunity in Irish racing for there to be complete transparency when it comes to, say, having an independent integrity commission or an independent integrity structure to have oversight of all aspects?
I think there'll have to be. Ultimately, that's the only real way forward. Like you take it this way: the 2 trainers that spoke, and I know them personally. They're very good guys. No problem with either of them in any sense. But when you take it that Michael Halford went through exactly how it works in his stables, with how they deal with horses and what medication they give them, and medication is a huge part of training horses. There's no doubt about it. It's the same in life. Look, in your own house, my house, every house, we all have a medicine cabinet somewhere full of all sorts of concoctions and tablets for whatever goes wrong. And it's the same in stables. As he was saying, he's actually got a guy working for him, some guy from Eastern Europe who works there, and he's a qualified chemist. So when you start seeing that this is, and an awful lot of the trainers that we know ourselves, some of the major trainers are qualified vets. So there's an awful lot of medication that goes into horses. Most of it is it's all 100% regulated, or it should be, with the exception of these steroids, which we're still not sure are they out there at all. But the bottom line is that horses are getting medication on a daily basis, and it's all of the horses for all sorts of minor ailments and to help them recover from injury and all sorts of different things. And some of them are on long-term medication. So that's an issue. That's why when a horse goes into training, it's taken out of the food chain, because, as we know, in certain countries, horses are part of the food chain. But once a horse goes into training, because of the medication that it will be given while it's in training, it no longer can go into the food chain. So that just goes to show you how much medication is around this whole sport.
We'll keep monitoring the Bolger situation and the accusations that he's levelled and see what happens in the weeks ahead. But let's talk a bit more positively about something that's happening in Irish racing, and that is what seems to be a really solid push around the introduction of barrier trials. Now, where I come from in Australia, in other regions like Hong Kong, New Zealand, the United States, and even Japan, barrier trials are such an important part of the training regime. They're publicised. Betting punters, people who love to have a bet on horse racing, get access to the data. And we're seeing this really now emerge with some very positive outcomes in Ireland, Vincent.
Yes, without a doubt. Irish Thoroughbred Marketing, which is a wing of Horse Racing Ireland, they've put a lot of effort into this over the last couple of years. They started them last year and they were very successful. Basically, the barrier trial is for unraced horses. It's a way of selling your horse. Something, another added way of showing what ability your horse has. They're run in the style of a race meeting. They're actually run on a racetrack generally. The ones we've had this year so far, we've had one on Monday the 28th of June. There were 10 of these barrier trials at Dundalk. There's another set of them due to take place on the 18th of August. And then depending on what sales are on later in the year, presuming they all go ahead, there may be a third set of them on the 13th of September. So what happens is they're run like a race, but the horses don't have to be pushed out to the line. You can just ride them as a piece of work as such, and we don't know what weight the horses carried. So they're the two things that are different from a race. But otherwise, if a jockey rides one and is excessive with the whip, they can be banned for that. And the same way that the horses can be tested for drugs or anything, in the same way they can at a race meeting, and the trainer will be responsible for that if anything went wrong. They're very good. We're seeing some great results from these, in the sense that there's a real advantage to a punter to know this information and to watch these races. What we had last year was we had quite a number of horses that came out of these and went on to win races. And from that session we had on the 28th of June, we've already seen a most impressive winner during the week, a horse called River Eden, which won at Dundalk on Monday. One of the most impressive maiden winners we've seen. Here's the barrier trial. You'll see River Eden is in the yellow, and the horse that's in the greenish or green quartered cap and epaulets there, that's a horse called Wren's Breath, which finishes second here to River Eden. Wren's Breath ran in Navan last week and was back from 20s into 12s and only went down in a photo finish beating a neck. But this River Eden, obviously you can see how impressive River Eden looked here. It's trained by Joseph O'Brien. It turned up in a maiden on Monday, and she absolutely hacked up on Monday. She won 8.5 lengths. There were 2 horses in that maiden that were rated in the low 80s. So that sort of performance puts her up into listed maybe group class straight away. We have a maiden, the first race in the Curragh this Saturday is a 7 furlong maiden for 2-year-olds, and there's 4 horses in that maiden that have ran in this barrier trials on the 28th of June. One of them is a horse called Almanera, also trained by Joseph O'Brien, which won one of those. There's another one that finished second. The key to this for me is this barrier trial information is not available anywhere on any of the major sites on the internet. Racing Post, Sporting Life, Racing TV, at the races, none of them have this. So if you look up that maiden on Saturday at the Curragh, you will see no form for any of these 4 horses. But go to irishracing.com. We have all the form. You can watch those videos. They're all there within the horse's form file if you go in and click on the race.
Yeah.
But it's a big advantage from a punting point of view.
No, I 100% agree with you, and I think the fact that you've got it on irishracing.com is a massive bonus for fans of Irish racing, but particularly those who actually want to have a bet, because, as I touched on, in a lot of the major betting jurisdictions, racing jurisdictions around the world, this is a massive tool when it comes to doing form analysis. So all credit to those involved in getting this up and running. Let's hope it's something that will continue to develop and be amplified. Let's talk about some great racing during the week, Ed, and I want to go back to the July Festival from Newmarket. We had 3 great days of racing. The Group 1 races themselves I thought were fantastic because of the Falmouth Stakes, which was run on Friday over the straight mile for the fillies and mares. Snow Lantern beating Mother Earth and Alcohol Free. What an outstanding contest that was. And then the day later in the July Cup, Starman's produced one of the best sprinting performances we've seen all year to win that so easily. I think the form out of that meeting should stand up.
Absolutely, they were two absolute corkers, weren't they? That Falmouth at one stage, it was kind of any one of about five you thought could have won it. Yeah, Snow Lantern got up in the closing stages. Obviously, Mother Earth was runner-up. She's been a very consistent filly. Alcohol Free went down, on a sword, if you like. Yeah, that was a terrific race. It looks as though there are kind of, how should we say, the form lines don't stack up in the sense it feels a little bit like they're all finding each other. They can all beat each other on a given day, but at the same time, they all run to a very kind of consistent high level. And I think that it's starting to look like a decent crop of 3-year-old fillies in that distance. And then, as you say, the July Cup was again an absolute belter of a race, wasn't it? Won by Starman, who's horse who, of course, had to avoid Royal Ascot because of the ground. Connections always said he needs a fast surface. Well, he got that at Newmarket and produced a scintillating display to beat Dragon Symbol and Oxted, who's in third, and Art Power was only half a length behind him. Another brilliant race. Interesting on the fallout for that. I think they're going to look in for France for the end of the season for Starman. They're going to, like I said, they're just going to have to plot themselves carefully with the ground. That is going to be the problem for him. If you want any kind of fancy targets at the end of the season, juicing the ground would be a problem. So I wonder if they might even consider going over to the Breeders' Cup with Starman if you get a bit of rattling ground over there. And probably the horse to pick out of it was Oxted. He was beaten in third. Hung violently across the track in the closing stages. Interesting, so Roger Till says that horse is going to go for a full MOT. Shaped as though, it wasn't beat far at all, but shaped as though something was amiss because the horse had never done that before at all there. So something to bear in mind. But yeah, two absolute top draw contests there, Shane, and really elevated that Newmarket meeting, has to be said.
Just want to touch on another point that's come out of the week, and as I touched on earlier, Coolmore winning Grade 1s in the United States, and then we saw Godolphin win a Grade 1 again in France yesterday. Hurricane Lane winning the Group 1 Grand Prix de Paris, Longchamp over a mile and a half. Now, I know you're a big fan of this horse. I know that you were talking him up as potentially a St. Ledger horse, but he just might be an arc horse now based on that performance. It was a breathtaking win.
Absolutely. I'll get my lighter and set lights on my St. Ledger Betty slip on the back of that. Obviously, yeah, on it double figures for Town Moor. But normally it's quite interesting, isn't it? You listen to jumps trainers say, as the horses get older, they get a lot slower. Well, it seems to be totally in reverse with Hurricane Lane because he seems to be thriving on his training and he just seems to be getting quicker. That seems to be the thing. That the kind of turn of foot looked really good there, admittedly on a little bit slower ground than normal, but the turn of foot looked to be there with Hurricane Lane. And I see now, you look at the ARC market anti-post and it's mouth-watering, isn't it? When you've got Snowfall, Love and Hurricane Lane pretty much co-favourites of 3. And I've got to be honest, as much as it pains me to say it, Shane, I think you'd be absolutely daft now on the back of that to probably go down the mile 6 route. That was one of the top performances for some time over a mile and a half. Perhaps the French crop in behind are pretty average, but the manner in which he quickened up over a mile and a half, I think was Charlie Appleby said. He said, look, we kind of had Adayar as our ARC horse a fortnight ago, and we had our Hurricane Lane as our St. Ledger type. But on the back of that performance, you'd be daft to be kind of waving away a crack at the Premier race over a mile and a half in Europe. So he's definitely put himself in the mix for the ARC. And yeah, it pains me to say it because I want him to end up on Town Moor and grind them all into the ground. But that horse, he had showed a serious gears, which he hadn't always shown in previous races. And that is hugely encouraging. Yeah, really, really exciting horse, Hurricane Lane.
And Vincent, it's good to see that the Irish Derby gets a significant boost like that because he scraped home when winning the Irish Derby. It was only a neck the margin on the line, but that was a different performance yesterday where he took off at the top of the straight and over that sort of 2 furlongs, from the run into the line from where he took the race by the scruff of the neck. He just kept getting better and better with every stride. It just might be a decent crop when you think about him, when you think about St Mark's Basilica for Aidan O'Brien, and of course the Derby winner Adia. There's a fair bit of depth emerging now.
Yeah, well, I think now, in fairness to Hurricane Lane, the Irish Derby performance, he only just gets up on the line. But having said that, Frankie had slipped the field on Lone Eagle, so he pulled 6 lengths clear of the ones that he hampered. Admittedly, he hampered them. He hampered half the field there when he came through with his run. So it'll be interesting to see. I think the Johnny Murtagh horse that finished 4th, I think, is due to run soon as well, and some of the other ones out of that Irish Derby. It'll be interesting to see how they perform because I think they were definitely inconvenienced when Hurricane Lane leaned in on them and caused the concertina effect. Hurricane Lane looks very, very good. No doubt about it. Real class animal. Love to see him in the ARC. Not sure if he'll definitely go because it's very difficult to give these fillies the allowance. He might be at nothing trying to give £7 to to the likes of Love or Snowfall for that matter if she goes. But it's a great season. I think we've seen some very, very good horses, and St. Mark's Basilica is definitely up there with them as well.
I must admit, my first thoughts at the start of the season was there may not be that much depth in that division, but as the season's progressed, you find yourself becoming more and more excited with some of these performances. I need to ask you about something though, Vincent. There is a gentleman by the name of Liam Burke who's done something which I think is utterly mad, and that is making a comeback to race riding at 64 years of age. What's going on?
Yeah, it's crazy stuff, isn't it? Liam is a gas character. He's one of the old school of national hunt guys in Ireland, and he'd be as tough as old boots, basically, and there's lots of them like him. Liam is the father of Johnny Burke, or Jonathan Burke, as you know, from the UK, who's ridden a lot of winners over there. He's one of the good guys, basically. He's very passionate about it, and he plays at a slightly lower level, maybe, than your Willie Mullins and the rest of them, but he's no less passionate about what he does. A lot of point-to-pointers, and a lot of horses on the track. He's had some good ones over the years, no great horses, but a few good ones, and he does well with what he has. Basically, he's 64. He's had both of his knees operated on. He hasn't ridden on a track for over 30 years, but he took out a license again last weekend and rode in a bumper in Sligo, and seemingly it's not the only time we're going to see him. He's reckoned he's going to have another few goes at this. He looked like a man now who was a bit ring rusty, to say the least, but finished sixth, and you never know. He might pop up with a winner someday soon.
I'm 46.
Sorry, Jay.
I'm 46 and I struggle to get out of bed. I couldn't think of what it'd be like being 64, trying to get back on a horse and riding in a race for the first time in 32 years. It's madness.
Well, that's the kind of on a serious level. I just wanted to point it out, Vincent. Would it have been a bit like a footballer when he transfers clubs? Would he have to gone through a whole kind of a medical assessment? Would he had to have passed a certain level of fitness tests to have got to be issued the license again? Yeah.
Yes, without a doubt he did. Yeah, he did all that. He did all that in the last week or two. With Horse Racing Ireland and Turf Club, he would have passed those tests to prove his fitness. Now, amazing. I'm not sure what tests they are. He doesn't have to run a marathon or anything, but he does whatever he has to do and prove that he's got some movement or whatever he has in his body to do it. But look, there's a good friend of mine, a guy called Chris Byrne. What's Chris now? He must be touching 60. He never rode a horse till he was 50. Never sat in a horse till he was 50. And he has a few quid from his business, so he decided he liked the idea of it. So he started riding horses, and then he started riding his own ones in races. Helpless. God bless Chris. He's helpless in the saddle. He'd admitted himself, not a clue. He got abused a few days coming in where he finished second and third, and he should have won. But it's a bit of fun for him. He just loves it. He owns a horse. Why not ride it himself? I know that there were issues with the regulatory board. Were trying to stop him getting his license, but he said, look, I'm not doing nothing wrong. I can ride it. I'm fit enough to sit on it, and I know the risks involved. So it's a bit of fun, but having said that, I suppose the other side of this is it's a professional sport generally, and there's a lot of money at stake, and do you really want to see these Corinthians out having a bit of fun on their horses? But at the same time, why not? There's enough room for them, I think, in the game.
Yeah, I think you touch on a really good point there, and that is about the professionalism of the sport. If markets can be assessed, knowing that, I don't want to be disrespectful to Liam Burke, but if it's well known that he's having his first ride in a race for 32 years, well, you can judge that based and expect the horse's price to be, at an appropriate level for a guy who's so inexperienced in that sphere compared to some of his rivals. But again, it does open up a lot of conversations. I know back in Australia, I love bringing up Australian references, but one of the true greats in harness racing, in trotting, is a driver called Brian Gath, who's only months away from turning 80 years of age, and he's still driving winners in the main metropolitan regions. It's one of those extraordinary things about equestrian sports. In a way, it doesn't really matter what age you get to. If you can still have that relationship with the horse, you're going to be right in the thick of things, Vincent. So good luck to Liam, I suppose.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And look, I think he will ride a winner at some stage before he hangs those boots up again for the final time. It's great stuff.
All right, guys, it's now time to have a look at the upcoming races. And the main focus of our conversation today will be on some wonderful action coming from the Curragh in Ireland this weekend. 2-day festival, Saturday and Sunday, where we see on Saturday the running of the Group 1 Juddmonte Irish Oaks over 1.5 miles. Now, we've got 8 horses declared, 8 fillies declared, courtesy of irishracing.com. Let's go through the field. A handful of Summers is at a big price, 66 to 1. Divinely for Aidan O'Brien. Wayne Lorden taking the ride at 10 to 1. The stablemate La Gioconda at 33-1. Mariesk is also at 33-1 for Joseph O'Brien. Nisus, the daughter of American Pharaoh Donica O'Brien, trains currently at 6-1. Party House, the daughter of Camelot for Ger Lions at 25-1. Short price favourite is the runaway winner of the Oaks at Epsom, Snowfall. Aidan O'Brien, Ryan Moore in the saddle, replacing Frankie Dettori, currently 100-30 on. And Willow, the other runner there for Aidan O'Brien, Shamie Heffernan riding at 14-1. Well, smallish field, Vincent, but with a very, very short price favourite in this potential superstar filly leading the market. What's your assessment?
Well, it's a non-race from a betting point of view, but Snowfall will win presumably. She's like 16-length winner of an Epsom Oaks. I'm sure it's only going to be a procession here, isn't it? The distance would be the thing. I can't imagine it being that far, but having said that, you never know. There's not a whole lot in opposition here. Between the 8 of them, they've only won 10 races. She won 2 of them. I think the bottom horse Willow has won 2 as well. The rest, there's even a maiden in here as well. So it's not a great renewal, with the exception of her. If you took her out, it's a very, very moderate contest, but she looks different class. You'd imagine she'll win as she wants. The interesting thing here with this race is Aidan has only won this twice in the last 12 years, which is kind of hard to believe for an Irish classic. He won it in 2016 with Seventh Heaven, 2014 with Bracelet. There is only 2 recent ones. He'll be happy to add another Irish Oaks to his trophy cabinet, and there's no doubt he will come Saturday.
Ed, from your perspective, how do you attack this race? Do you side with the favourite, the short price, or do you try and find something that can get her beat? And as Vincent said, perhaps this is not a race that Aidan's got one of the great records in compared to some of the other Group 1 features that he's dominated in recent times. What do you do?
To be brutally honest, I think it's a race just to avoid from a betting perspective. I mean, it's a shocking renewal, to say below par. I mean, no, it really is. I mean, she's got over a stone in hand on official figures. The second in here is rated 105. I mean, there'd be better. There's a listed race coming up at Newbury at the weekend where there'll be higher rated horses. I mean, it's not good. Just to be blunt, she should win this in a common canter. If you're going to be really kind of pedantic, only thing I would say about her is she seems to have really taken off with substantial give underground. I mean, it was pretty wet at Epsom when she won, and she seemed to really enjoy it. She got a little bit of a knee action. She showed that again at York as well. I believe it's good to firm in places. The sun's supposed to be out. That'd be the only thing. I don't think she'd ever really want the ground to jar up. Maybe more with the kind of longer term view, if you see what I'm saying. But look, she wins this. She should stamp her authority. I find it hard to believe she's as good as she looked at Epsom, if you see what I'm saying. I mean, she holds the record for the biggest winning margin ever in the Epsom Oaks. Whether she comes out and wins this by 28 lengths, as she should do on official figures, I don't think we'll quite see that. But look, she's head and shoulders above the rest. A race to enjoy, and it's more one of those. If I think she'll end up in the Arc. It's one of those. She comes out and puts on another barnstorming 15-length romp, then naturally she gets slashed into, even despite the lack of quality in here, she'll get slashed in even more for that big one at the end of the season where she's trading around 11-2, 6-1 now. So yeah, probably the longer term view of her, but I expect her to win this in a common canter.
All right, the favourite to win, but not a betting race. Vincent, have you had a chance to sort of cast your eye over some of the other races at the Curragh? Is there anything standing out over the 2 days? Because there are plenty of good feature races on those 2 days of the meeting.
Well, there's a very good sprint on Saturday. This Logo Hunter has been one of the revelations in Ireland this season. I'm actually going to, as we get down to tips for the weekend, I'm going to oppose Logo Hunter. But basically, Logo Hunter, a guy called Michael Brown, who's another one of these journeyman trainers, never really had a horse. They're mainly a selling yard, but they happened to hit a good one here. It was an ex-Ger Lions horse, and it's won a load of races this season. When it won the last day, it went from a rating, I think it was about 85, 86 at the start of the season, got up to 113. So it's a high-class horse, there's no question about that. But when it won in Cork the last day, it just looked to me like it had plateaued a bit. It wasn't carrying on this progression that we had seen in all the previous outings. So I just wonder, has it reached its peak, or is it beginning to come back down a little bit? And there's a horse in there, Measure of Magic of Johnny Murtagh's, a filly, 3-year-old filly. She's very good, and she's met Logo Hunter twice and beaten Logo Hunter twice, once this season and once last season up in Down Royal, I think it was. So she's a chance. The way they're betting on it at the moment, I think they go 6-4 Logo Hunter, 5-1 Measure of Magic. It's an 8-runner race each way. Measure of Magic, it's picking it up. Basically, you can't fail to get your money back at the least, and there's a strong chance you'll collect the way Murch's horses are run.
All right, I like that approach. Ed, anything else standing out from your perspective of the Curragh over the weekend?
No, although Vincent's twisted my arm now, actually looking, I'm shocked at the difference in prices there, really. I mean, her run in defeat, Measure Magic, in the Commonwealth Cup, you could argue is as good a form, if not better, than anything Logo Hunter's produced. I mean, that's a stunning run, especially on bad ground. And looking at her profile, Measure of Magic, all its best form has come on a sounder surface. So, yeah, no, nothing else at the Curragh for me. Just a view of Snowfall. And in a kind of way, I'd like her to win, like kind of unconvincingly, and then we might get a bit more. She might drift for a few anti-post targets, so we can get a bit of price on her. But yeah, just a watch and brief for me at the Curragh over the weekend.
Okay, let's switch our attention now to pretty good card of racing at Newbury on Saturday, and there's quite a few highlight races. We've got the Weatherby Super Sprint Stakes, the Bet365 Stakes, amongst others, and there's also the Bet365 Hackwood Stakes. Now, this is coming through now with 7 declared for this 6-furlong sprint feature. King's Lynn is a 9-4 Andrew Balding, Asheen Murphy. Royal Commando at 12-1. Royal Crusade at 8-1 for Charlie Appleby and William Buick. Tabdeed at 130, Diligent Harry at 3-1, so pretty tight in the top of the market. Method at 10-1, Happy Romance also at 10-1. That's the field of 7. Do you have an opinion of this race at all, Vincent?
Well, the only thing I noticed is Tabdeed won this last year, won a half a length last year in this race, so that's a straight away a marker for maybe doing something this time. The only thing is Tabdeed is a 6-year-old. He's only run 10 times in his life, so obviously he's got a problem training. There's obviously issues somewhere there, so that would be a little bit of a question mark or a negative, but winning the race last year is definitely a positive. The other one is another one is Diligent Harry, is a 3-year-old, has only raced on the all-weather, and that's a bit of a worry for me. I'd like to see them race on grass at some stage before going for one of these type of races or having a bet on them. So that'd be a negative for me. Tabdeed, possibly, because it won it last year, you'd be more inclined to side with that horse.
Fair assessment. What about you, Ed? Do you like anything in the race?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I've got it between the top two, but I'm actually narrowly with Tabdeed, just as that previous quarter distance win did it a bit better than the half a length last year, if you see what I'm saying. I think was well on top at the line and had a nice warm up in the Chip Chase Stakes recently. Clearly was a bit of a ring rush removal job. Should be absolutely spot on for this. Whereas King's Lynn, so we'd had quite a few hard battles already this season. Tried to back it up twice at Royal Ascot, which doesn't bit of an unusual tactic for British training, shall we say. I'm listening to your comments on the show previously, Shane, where you say in Australia it's not unusual that horses can back up the races quite quickly. King's Lynn tried to do it twice in the handicap working man in a Group 1 at Royal Ascot, ran well in defeat at both occasions. So yeah, Tabdeed, the kind of course of distance form, the been there, done it. Ground's the other point we should touch upon for this race here, Shane. Softer conditions wouldn't be an inconvenience for King's Lynn. Tabdeed, according to Owen Burrows, must have a sound surface, and we do have the kind of Costa del Bahamas coming in here into the UK very soon. I mean, it's due to get up to 28, 29 degrees over the weekend. I'm expecting the ground to be riding pretty much on the quick side by the time they go to post, which should, in my view, kind of swing things towards Tabdeed a little bit.
All right, good push there. Let's have a look at another good race this weekend at Market Raisin. We've got the running of the Grade 3 Betway Summer Plate. It's a handicap steeplechase, and I think we've got 16 declared for this very, very good race. And Talk is cheap at 20-1. Captain Tomcat, who's been in a winning spree of late at 9-2. Pink Eyed Pedro's at 14-1. Solomon Gray's at 6-1. Accelerator Express at 12s. Frankie de Burley's at 10-1, as is Fire Away. Mercy and Prince currently quoted at 14-1. Temple Park at 16-1. Darling Melte at 15-2. Top of the Cotswolds at 12-1. Royal Village is at 14-1. Dan Seidel at 14-1. That's a Givens at 12-1. Lord Brian potentially will not be running, and Sebastian Beach is currently at 33-1. So 16 have accepted for the race. Vincent, do you have an assessment of this good race at Market Raisin?
Yeah, I've no strong opinion here now, Shane, to be honest. The only thing I noticed in it is this Solomon Gray, the Skelton horse, was third in the race last year, but was beaten 8.5 lengths, has only won one race since, and now comes in here and is £6 higher. So you're beaten 8.5 lengths last year, you're £6 higher now. It's hard to see why that might win, yet it's one of the favourites. No real opinion on it. Wouldn't be a betting race for me, to be honest with you, particularly if it turns into a 15-runner race rather than 16.
All right, fair enough. Ed, I think you've got a bit of confidence about this race, though, surely.
Well, no, the interesting here. Well, what I was going to say, Shane, there's a serious wider point I'm going to come on to in a second. But Captain Tomcat, of course, has been the revelation. He's 3 from 3 over fences, goes into much deeper waters here as a novice chaser in a big field handicap. There's won 3 novice chases at 5 to 6, 4 to 6, 2 to 7 in 4 runner fields. Been given a BHA mark of 147. Now, this goes back onto this talk we had about the handicapping system, going back to Cheltenham Festival. A lot of British trainers saying, look, we accept we're not good enough in the Grade 1s and the Irish horses are well clear of us. But at least, come on, give us a chance at some of these handicaps. We've got horses handicapped to the hilt. And this is one where Dr. Richard Newland's actually got on record, the trainer, and kind of voiced his displeasure, says he's was going to lodge an official complaint to the handicapping board here about this horse, who's, as I said, won 3 absolute Mickey Mouse races during the summer. Has been given a mark of 147. Just a bit of context, a house like Chantry House, who went on to win the Grade 1 Marsh Chase at the Cheltenham Festival, was rated 151 before he went into Cheltenham Festival, going on to win a Grade 1. How on earth can there be £4 between these two based on what they'd actually done on a racetrack? It's absolutely crackers. I can understand the aggrievance here. There needs to be, again, some kind of common sense going in here. Yes, you're winning these absolute Mickey Mouse races by 39 lengths on the bridle, but there's a world of difference between 3-4 runner summer races on fast ground compared to your national hunt, your winter depths national one stacked deep graded races. It's almost a bit like I was having this debate on there the other day. You almost need a separate summer jumps rating system, a bit like an all-weather versus turf on the flat, because there's something not right here. So in answer to your question, I don't really know. Captain Tomcat is the most exciting. He's unbeaten. He's been pulverising the opposition. Has been given a mark of 147 when he's actually achieved. I think he's personally absolutely crackers. It's not to say that the horse couldn't go on to defy this, but it's just it's the wider debate here about the kind of handicapping system. Handicapper comes out and says, well, look, you won by 22 lengths. What do you want me to do? And Dr. Richard Newland's argument is, well, hang on, a bit of context needs to be here. 2 horses have bombed out. The third has run totally below par, and this is a totally different scenario to what you normally expect. Anyway, so it's an interesting one in answer to you, Shane. I'm with Captain Tomcat. The horse has the liability to be 10, 12 pounds wrong here on kind of his true form. At the same time, he's a swashbuckling, front-running, galloping, exciting kind of heart-on-your-sleeve horse, and it'd be nice, and it would almost, in a way, I don't think Dr. Richard Newland wants the horse to go and win, because then he'll make himself look a total hypocrite for moaning about its handicap mark. But look, nonetheless, it's an interesting debate for another day, but Captain Tomcat, by far the most exciting in the lineup.
I'm going to twist your arm, though, a little bit more before we move on, because I think it is a fundamental issue that is impacting British horse racing. In a way, probably flows into Irish racing as well. There is a massive programming issue if we are consistently getting served up fields of 3, 4, 5 and 6 on a regular basis. It's bad for betting. It's bad for handicapping, and it's bad for the overall assessment of the game. Do you think at any stage we will see someone from the BHA or even one of the other authorities step up and say, we've got a problem here, we need to make changes? Or is it just going to be something that remains in the cycle and we'll be arguing over this for another 12 months?
Well, I've been arguing over this for about 7-8 years. It seems just to be a reoccurring theme, doesn't it? There's too much racing. I really think we are trying to overcomplicate this. There's too much racing to the horse population. You're sticking on in the summer 8 to 10 novice chases around some of your summer jumping tracks. There's not enough horses to go around. I mean, you can't just invent them out of nowhere. And this is the problem. And then when it gets to the winter as well, it's the same problem. There's only a certain pool of horses that go around. And, again, we'd have to have another separate show. We touched upon it. I started saying I think they need to cull the amount of novice chases. They need to cull the amount of graded novice chases. This is looking further ahead, of course. And they need to start bringing in qualifying criteria for the big races, in my kind of view. Like you have the per temps final as a handicap hurdle race at Cheltenham Festival, where you have to have qualified in order to run there. And so I started to think for something, this is kind of going off on a tangent, but on the same theme, for something like the Arkle or the Champion Chase, I think you've got to start bringing in qualifying criteria to say, look, if you want to run in the big Grade 1 at the Cheltenham Festival or Aintree or whatever, you've got to run in 3 or 4 of the Clarence House, the Desert Orchid, the Game Spirit, the Schlur Chase. That way it would force a lot of these horses all to meet earlier in the season, you get bigger fields, so which makes a better product. And then they're all going to then meet anyway at Cheltenham or Aintree. So then Cheltenham and Aintree are happy, and that side of the product's happy. There needs to be something done about it. We have the same old rigmarole year after year, 3-runner race. A horse wins it 1-18. The trainer moans about his handicap mark. Nothing gets done, and we just go around in circles. So coming back to this point, though, with Captain Tomcat, this is more of a kind of a wider point about handicapping, but whether there needs to be a kind of a summer jumping criteria band labelled onto some of these races where you could basically say, right, you can go out and win like Arkle, but whatever you do, you're not going to get put up any higher than 140. Well, there needs to be some kind of dramatic way of thinking or altering this kind of handicapping landscape, because you cannot have a horse with 2 novice chases in the summer beating. I mean, Ajali is rated 136. Okay, it's absolutely what the floor of it. The horse clearly underperformed. And now he's saying if you were going into the Cheltenham Festival, you didn't only be getting £4 from your March chase winner in a handicap. I mean, there's something not right here, and it needs to be addressed. It won't be addressed, and we'll be having this conversation this time next year. So that's the bottom line on it.
All right, I'll keep it on the list of things that we'll just continually talk about. Vincent, let's talk something positive, though, about a programming aspect, and that is the Galway Festival, which is not too far away. It is, without a doubt, one of the truly great and unique racing festivals anywhere in the world. What do we need to do to find a winner at Galway?
Well, the first thing we'll look at is just, there was news came through yesterday. Galway have been looking to get a crowd of 5,000 a day for each of their 7 days coming up at the end of the month. But they got news back from the government yesterday afternoon to say it's only 1,000 a day, so it's pretty poor. Pretty poor news. Everyone's very disappointed. I'm sure Galway as a city is extremely disappointed. The racecourse as well. They'd put a lot of contingency plans in place. I'm sure they'd had long conversations with Horse Racing Ireland and the IHRB and how to handle the crowd and how to deal with all the COVID issues around that. But it's a kick in the teeth, to be honest with you. 1,000 is ridiculous considering the size of Galway and what it can cater for. Like, we're talking about a track here that has had 50-odd thousand at some of the days in previous years. There's no problem. 1,000 is nothing. 5,000 would have been nothing, to be honest with you. And it's such an important part of the Irish racing calendar. I really think they should have done something. Like we've got GAA matches coming up in the next few weeks, where in Croke Park, where there'll be 18,000 at them. At the same time, there's 1,000 people in Galway the same week. So that seems bold, to be honest. Yeah. But anyway, we'll move on to the more positive side of it. Is Galway is a big festival for us. It's a huge thing. The racing itself largely is rubbish, but it's not about that. It's about the betting aspect of it,
seafood,
and it's about the fun of Galway. Yeah, it's all of that, Ed. Yeah, the seafood is a big aspect to it too.
Yeah.
But it really is. It's a huge part of our culture here. We love it. And it's amazing it's stuck to 7 days. There was talk years ago they might even extend it a bit further. Sure, like, why not make it all summer long? So what we have is they changed the structure because of COVID. We used to have it that there were mixed cards each day, which added to the spectacle it was a part of. Galway realistically was a part of the Irish summer up to a couple of years ago. But now what they have is we've got all flat Monday, all flat Tuesday, then we have the National Hunt Wednesday, Thursday and Friday, and then we're back to flat Saturday, Sunday. From a betting point of view, there's a lot of things to take into account here with Galway. You've got a number of things, realistically. I'll go through some of the basic things you're looking for here. The first one is previous course form is hugely significant for Galway. It's a very unusual track, a very demanding track, that particularly in the flat races, the shorter flat races over 7 furlongs and a mile. During the week, there's 19 of those races over 7 furlongs or a mile, and you need, realistically, a low draw number. Unless your horse has stones in hand, it has no chance from a high draw. So if you're having a bet in any of them, look for the low draws. Last year, of the 19 races, 12 of them were won by horses drawn in stalls 1 to 6. So pick one of those. You've got a great chance. These are maximum fields all the time as well. So there's 4 places in most of these races, handicaps particularly, obviously. But you're looking at good each way bets. Pick a low stall number that has previous course form, possibly won there before. Huge advantage. You need to be up at the pace in those big handicaps as well. So that's another thing, looking for horses that will be on the pace. Coming from the back, you've absolutely no chance. Generally, you get the odd one will rubbish that stat, but realistically, that's what you're looking for. Then there's quite a few maiden races on the flat during the week and over hurdles, but particularly the flat ones. You're looking for a horse with a previous run. It's very important to have a previous run anywhere. Not necessarily a good run, just a run, because the race course experience, like the barrier trials as we've seen recently, it's a big help to a horse when they've been in that sort of environment previously. Another thing we have with Galway, this is an odd stat, and I'm not quite sure why it's the case. I'm thinking about this a bit, and maybe it's to do with the actual type of competition we're dealing with here, is you get an awful lot of horses you'll see at Galway. You see this at a lot of these festivals or bigger meetings where trainers try something new. So they put on tongue strap, blinkers, cheek pieces, visor, hood, all of those. They don't work in Galway. That's the bottom line here. That 2 years I did some analysis on this. There were 66 horses carried new gear for the first time in Galway. Out of the 66 of them, none of them won. Not a single one. And of those, 18 of them started at 10 to 1 or less in the races. So these were fancied horses. But what happens a lot is you have a horse, most horses in Ireland at this stage of the year, if you've got a horse in training and you're an owner, you want to go to Galway. And the trainer is telling you for the last 6 months, don't worry about what's happened before, we're going to get to Galway, you'll win in Galway. They're all told this. So what ends up happening is to try and G them up, oh yeah, we're going to stick blinkers on him when he gets to Galway. Wait till you see the difference that makes. It makes no difference is the bottom line. I think the reason is these are very competitive races, and Galway is a very demanding track. It's got about a 3 furlong uphill finish, and it gives a real opportunity for a horse that hasn't really got the Galileo will to win. There's a lot of places to opt out here, and they do. So that's why if you start seeing ones that have got blinkers, tongue straps, cheek pieces, the whole shebang on them, that's a no. You don't want to be backing one of them in Galway. You need something that's going to be very genuine and has proved it can do it before. Another thing for Galway is horses often run more than once in the week. So if you get a horse that, not necessarily one that's run badly earlier in the week, but it's run well, maybe a bit unlucky, or won earlier in the week, definitely back them when they come out the second time. A couple of years ago, we had a horse called One Cool Poet, won 3 times. That was in 2019. Last year, we Princess Zoe won twice here, and then came out and won again at the September meeting. So horses with previous winning form during the week, huge help when they come back out later in the week, which happens quite a bit. Also, you're looking at horses, previous winners here. I just noticed that there's 7 horses that won here last year that have run or won really well in the last week or two. We've got Eastern Racer out on Friday, Walking on Glass, Loudest Whisper, Nibbler's Charm, Sir Jack Thomas, Dark Voyager, all shown real good form in the last couple of weeks, coming back to Galway again. So they're the sort of horses you'd be looking at. And then another thing is owners. There's certain owners target this every year. There's one particular guy, he's horses mainly with Tony Martin, a guy called John Breslin. He's a publican from New York. His horses, they run all year, but they only win in Galway. That's the bottom line. If they're going to win, they'll win in Galway. Another one is the Me family, who are from the local area. They've horses with Shark Hanlon. They've horses with Emmett Mullins. Willie Mullins, I think they've a few with as well. Their horses win in Galway every year. That's what they do. So they're the sort of ones you're looking out for. And then the other thing is, realistically, Willie Mullins, we know what he can do at the likes of Punchestown, what he can do at Cheltenham and the other big festivals. Well, he used to sidestep Galway with summer racing, summer national hunts, and he doesn't keep that many horses this time of the year. And the same with the flat. The last 4 or 5 years, he's changed target. There's so much money at stake here, huge prize money, big sponsorship all through the week. He's been targeting this and farming it for the last 4 or 5 years. He will have winners of amateur races, bumpers, there's amateur flat races on the flat. He'll have hurdles, he'll have flat handicappers. There's a big race Monday evening. It's basically the biggest race in the season for amateur riders. So that's a race he'll target. He'll have 4 or 5 in that all the way through the week. Watch out for the Willie Mullins horses. He is definitely, you'll see horses come here, haven't run for 6 or 8 months, missed the whole winter, and you're wondering what happened then. They must have had a setback. They'll hack up. That's the bottom line. So keep an eye on his as well.
Well, I don't think there could be any better ambassador for the Galway Festival other than yourself, because you've just twisted my arm enough that I'm going to put this right at the top of my bucket list of race meetings to get back to once the world opens up properly. And I'll tell you what we'll do next week on Jump To It. We'll spend a bit of time talking about the Galway Festival as well as Glorious Goodwood and, of course, the King George coming up at Ascot. It's now time for the tips of the week. And we'll start with you, Vincent, as we take a moment just to reflect on your tips from last week. You were just marginally down last week, but of course coming off that thumping Royal Ascot period where you are well and truly ahead at 29.5 units ahead at the moment. But Walking on Glass was able to get the job done for you last week at Kilbeggan. Let's have a look at your selections as we go into this week. Who are you keen on?
Okay, well, I've got four altogether. We got them all there. Where we
Yep,
possibly
just
don't on
keep
that
rolling. I
screen,
think
but
the
you'll
first
have them
one's
as we go along.
Everlasting Promise is the first one to start with.
Okay, it certainly is. Yeah. So as we say, as I stated last week, a little proviso here. We haven't seen all the weekend runners, so I'm going with what I know runs basically. So I'm taking a couple on Friday and that particularly. So we've got Everlasting Promise runs in the 4 o'clock in Killarney on Friday. This horse hacked up in this race last year. He's trained by Ed Bolger, owned by JP McManus. Won this race by 13 lengths last year. Looked a bit of a star at that stage, and then didn't reappear till about a month ago. He ran over hurdles in down Patrick. I think it was down Patrick he ran it. I thought he'd win that day. He was off a very low rating over hurdles, but he never performed, to be honest. I'm just hoping that maybe coming back to Killarney, he's worth a little squeak here. Back in the race he hacked up in last year. He'll be a biggish price, at least he should be. There looks to be a better McManus horse in the race that Mark Walsh rides, but I wouldn't be surprised to see this guy pop up at a price. That's why I'm just sticking little 1 unit on him, just to say he's running, watch out for him, maybe there's a chance. My main bet of the weekend, and I think possibly of the whole next week, is this Sempo. He runs in a novice chase in Killarney. It's the 5:10 in Killarney on Friday. This is a cracking race now. There's some very good horses in here. Some real decent 135 type, 139. I think Sempo's rated over fences. This horse has a big chance. He hasn't had a recent run. That's the one question mark. He finished 5th in the Irish Grand National as a novice to that freewheeling Dillon. That was a big run. It was a huge step up and trip for him. He'd never run up to 3 miles prior to that, so 3 mile 5 was a huge step up for him. Ran really well. Probably didn't stay the trip. The thing here is the conditions of this race really suit him. He gets in here as a maiden, so he gets the allowances. All the rest of them in the field have all won before. This horse will not be far away. I think he'll win, personally. I'm not quite sure what price he is. There's no market on this race yet, but I'll be surprised if he doesn't win. He's trained by Joseph O'Brien. Those barrier trials that we talked about earlier, there were 10 barrier trials in Dundalk that day. Joseph O'Brien won 7 of them. He's also had a lot of winners on the track in the last couple of weeks. His horses are really in top form. I'd imagine Sempo is as well. I'd expect him to win, so I think I'm going for a big bet on him. 6 points out of the 10. The 10 units I have to bet, I went for 6 on him, so I really do think he'll win.
All right, good push there for Sempo. We'll move on to the next one, and this is Kilbeg, and also on Friday.
Yes, a horse called Presenting Bonnie. She disappointed last time out. She's got a poor run. She got a duck egg for running in Sligo recently. What happened in Sligo was the ground went soft on her. I think she needs good ground. The key to her, it's in her name, Presenting Bonnie. She's by presenting, they need quick ground generally. The vast majority of them do. So she's won twice here before. Twice a course and distance winner in May and June, both on goodish ground. She's going to get quick ground again. It's a quick enough turnaround from Sligo last Sunday, but I'd expect her to maybe reproduce her form. I could see her pop up at a nice-ish price, maybe 8 or 10 to 1. So I stuck a point on her as well. And then my last selection for the weekend is Measure of Magic in this 250 at the Curragh on Saturday, the sprint, the Paddy Power Sapphire Stakes. It's up against, as I mentioned earlier, Logo Hunter, who's been a revelation this season. But I think Measure of Magic will literally have the measure of Logo Hunter. They've met twice before. She's beat him twice. She, as Ed pointed out, she ran a cracker in the Commonwealth at Royal Ascot behind Campanelle and Dragon Symbol. She's 5 lengths back of them. It's still a very, very good run in the context of this race. Johnny Murta, I know the team there think that Measure of Magic is basically a Group 1 winner waiting to happen. So I think it'll get a Group 2 on the board this weekend. I think she'll win.
All right, 4 very good selections with nice cases made there from Vincent. Ed, let's have a look at your performance last week as we assess. You were down just marginally, down 3 units for the week. Dandala, Lucander and Oxted not delivering, but particularly Oxted running really well despite being erratic in the Darley July Cup. All right, let's have a look as you're still well and truly in advance there at 13.5 units ahead. Let's have a look at your selections for this weekend.
Yeah, slightly quieter on the betting front this weekend. Some trappy contests, but yeah, come prompt in the summer hurdle market race and the big hurdle race of the weekend. There, interesting horse there, Sue. Has been running some really good races in defeat in big races. Of course, finished 3rd in the Swinton. Went close at the Aitree Festival as well when finishing runner-up. But interesting connections brought Camperon here for an absolute joke of a contest last time out. I think went off 1-14 in a 3-runner race, so he had about 2 stone in hand, but gave him an eye in over course of distance round the track and appeared to absolutely love it. One came home hard held by 17 lengths, as you would expect, but nice little confidence prep boost for this contest. off 134. On paper, at least anyway, if you compare this race compared to the Swinton and Aintree, I think this just looks a little bit easier, slightly calmer waters here. I think the Philip Hobbs horse with Tom O'Brien in the saddle can go well at around 6-1 mark. And then, we touched on it earlier in the Hackwood. I do think Tabdeed, the ground could be a key here. I think Andrew Balding's runner, who's favourite, would perhaps prefer a little bit of give. Temperatures are supposed to hit 27, 28 degrees in the area over the next 2 or 3 days. So ground should quicken up sufficiently for Tabdeed, who did it in nice style 12 months ago. Isn't the easiest to keep sound, but had a nice little warm-up prep run at Newcastle, if you like, in the chip chase when placed there. That should have that horse absolutely spot on for this, and I thought could easily follow up last year's success.
Right, thank you for that, Ed. Let's have a look at my performance last week. And yes, I had a good week, thankfully, because I had to go out for dinner on Saturday night. It was expensive and I was able to pay for it. Native Trail getting the job done for us. Caravana, of course, was a late scratching out of the Bunbury Cup and missed out with Supremacy in the Galway July Cup. But thankfully, a terrific win by Native Trail, who I think is a horse who's got a massive future. But I'm still down, so I need to fight back again this weekend. And I found 2 selections that I'm quite keen on. I'll start with my old favourite, King's Lynn. I think in the Hackwood Stakes, it looks very well placed. As Ed mentioned earlier, did come through that busy preparation at Royal Ascot Racing twice in the week, but I thought ran superbly on both occasions. Go back a couple of starts before that, a big win. And I think in this standard of race, around that sort of Group 3 level, he'll get his chance to win again. Sheen Murphy back in the saddle replacing Ryan Moore. So I'm going big. 5 units to win at 100 to 30 with William Hill. And I'm also very keen on a horse called Darab, who failed in the Prix de Jockey Club behind St Mark's Basilica last start, but it was a very good winner at Newmarket at the start prior, currently getting around 9 to 2 with Paddy Power. So in the Steventon Stakes at Newbury, both my bets at Newbury on Saturday, I'm happy to have 5 units to win on Darab. So with a bit of luck, we'll keep building some momentum and fighting back and getting back in the black. All right, guys, just a quick thought ahead to the weekend. Vincent, what's the thing you're most looking forward to this weekend?
Well, I'm thinking here Sempo Friday evening is one of the best bets I've seen for a while. I think that will win. If you can get odds against that, definitely have a bet. And then the other one is, I think, Measure Magic. That's a good sprint on Saturday at the Curragh. I'm really looking forward to seeing that. I'd like to see her show what they think she's capable of. And Johnny Murtagh's 5 to 1 each way with 8 runners. You can't go wrong.
Good stuff. Great working with you again, Vincent. Good luck this weekend. Ed, I've got to give you also a pat on the back because you've helped us start a new show here on the Betting Expert channel with Chipping In, which is focused on the Open, of course, the British Open Golf Championship, which will be taking place over the 4 days of the weekend. I know you're quite keen keeping an eye on that, but also with racing, you've got plenty to look forward to over the coming days.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, it's going to be 30 degrees in Cheltenham where I live. So, yeah, I've got if I go outside and get sunburnt, so that's the perfect excuse to sit in front of the golf and the racing for the next few days, I think it's fair to say. But, yeah, it's a good racing. Looking forward to seeing Snowfall. Looking forward to Newbury as well. Market Raisin, so a couple of juicy races on the cards there. And of course, yeah, the golf as well is taking centre stage. Lots of sport going on at the moment. The weather's turning as well. Everything's looking up.
Good stuff. Great working with you as well, and good luck this weekend. There we have it. Vincent Finegan and Ed Quigley joining me here on Jump to It. Hope you've enjoyed today's show. Of course, it's all brought to you by irishracing.com. Vincent and the team do a fantastic job. You can go to irishracing.com, get all your form, your news, your tips, and betting information. And of course, a lot to look forward to with so much wonderful racing coming, particularly from Ireland this weekend. And of course, bettingexpert.com. Stephen Harris, who's been on holidays for the past couple of weeks, he'll be back next week. But Stephen provides his daily nap or best bet and also value selections for racing in the UK. He's been in fantastic form over the past few months. Make sure you head to bettingexpert.com. Hope you've enjoyed today's edition of Jump to It. We'll see you next week.